Okay, guys, we are back for part 4 of tracking this podcast. Just to catch you up in case you, for some reason, did not click on the first 3 parts of this video. Okay, go back, do that. I had this person in my comments and they recommended this podcast to listen to because they're really making the assertion that the phenomena that we were experiencing with fat acceptance is not a social phenomenon. It did not appear organically through social media, but in fact is a top-down PSYOP, essentially, really led by this behavioral clinic. Now, when I use the word behavioral, remember we were using different vocabulary for this video, okay? Behavioral is the word that we use when you see this word. And if you see this word, I'm going to say DIET. Okay. And I'm probably going to say EAT as well, EATING, things like that, just to make sure YouTube doesn't pick up on this video and flag it. It might flag it anyways. It might actually happen. We just got to hope it doesn't. I'm going to be taking out a lot of sound in the podcast when they do say these terms. And hopefully you can pick it up in the context. If it's something really long that you cannot pick up in the context, I will just put the text on the screen. Keep an eye out for that. But yeah, basically, Aubrey Gordon is on this behavioral clinics podcast. This behavioral clinic is one of the largest in the nation. They're in several different states. I mean, it seems like half the states at least. And they're really pushing fat acceptance propaganda. It's very interesting. Even though they treat behaviors, their main message is it's more about weight stigma and not about your health. Your mental health more important than your physical health. They should be equally important. Anyways, yeah, let's watch part 4 of this podcast, jump right in and finish it up. And I'm personally so far kind of blown away that it seems kind of innocuous, right? It seems kind of innocuous because this is the same stuff that people like Aubrey Gordon, who is on the podcast right now, has talked about all the time. But the fact that you have a legitimate behavioral clinic who is supposed to be treating people with these behaviors is espousing the same talking points is frankly crazy, negligent, and dear God help us all. So yeah, let's jump into it.
Aubrey, we were talking about effectiveness, and I would have to say that you're exposing the scaffolding on the diet industry has been one of, I'd say, unlocking the next level of my understanding of my body and history with food and body. No, seriously, like,
thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
That's great.
But when I listen to the maintenance phase and I hear like, oh yeah, French women don't get fat. That's like a recipe. I'm like, right. Oh,
yeah.
I thought I should have just liked the leek soup. Like, I'm like, why did I not like it? Oh, because I was hangry.
Yeah.
And so, when you start to unpack that for people, myself included, and all the many grateful listeners of the podcast, it's just such a gift because it truly does, like, it just allows you to kind of revisit something and re-examine in a way that is something that you always thought was true. And it's so important to do that in the world of culture because, we're talking about things that everybody has always assumed was true. And your work is just so powerful and meaningful to me personally. And I know to so many other people.
Oh, buddy, that is so kind. I will say it's a very fun thing about making the show that I also get to get my mind blown through the process of making the show. I will absolutely never forget sitting down to record an episode with Mike where he had researched the president's physical fitness test. And I absolutely thought that was like standardized from state to state, that the data was going somewhere and doing something. And that the public policy was there with like benchmarks that we were all aiming toward or whatever. None of those things were true. Dwight Eisenhower just thought we needed military-ready children.
Ignoring the presidential fitness thing, let's talk about the full endorsement this behavioral clinics podcast just gave Aubrey Gordon and the BS that she's espousing. These people are supposed to be helping people with behaviors, and instead they're reinforcing extremely negative, harmful, and frankly deadly ideas. That's really crazy.
Which I am not.
No, I have not one time in my life have I been military ready. Never.
Right.
Yeah.
I just need to know how long you... No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's so incredibly kind of you. And I'm so glad that is having that impact for you, bud. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate you.
Well, I just have to know how long you research for each episode, because to truly expose the scaffolding and to simplify it the way that you do, it takes a lot of background knowledge, and then you're like creating the cliff notes for all of us. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, totally. So I think depending on the topic, on really, really gnarly ones, we'll spend like a month. On sort of most of our episodes, I would say it's about 2 weeks of research for each of us, and then a weekish of editing and writing and all that kind of stuff. So it's a labor intensive little process to get it right.
It is. Well,
Yeah.
we appreciate you because someone needs to be digging in and providing us all the right information. So thank you so much for that.
Sure, appreciate it.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious.
Okay, listen to what you just said there. Giving us the right information. I don't know if you guys ever watched the maintenance phase. I've only ever seen other people cover them and point out how they're ridiculous and just their research is just misinterpretation, making things up, cherry picking, and attempting to debunk the actual data that shows about health and weight loss. And again, it's a full endorsement. You're supposed to be helping people with their health.
Your take on how can folks become allies?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels really, really simple, which is like get curious about what people in your life who are fatter than you need. Ask them what they need. Ask them how they need you to show up, and then do those things.
Okay, guys, as a fat person, this is how I need you to show up for me. I need you to not follow these people and their terrible advice, okay? Now, I'm not saying to go out there and bully fat people. I'm not saying fat shaming works at all, but let's all be realists. Let's all live in the real world. Let's all acknowledge reality, okay? I use that word 3 different ways for a reason, okay? Because real, as in truth, matters. And this is not the truth. They're actively lying to you.
If you have a classmate who is a fat person who is like, actually, yeah, the desks in this classroom are really, really hard for me, or this professor in our class keeps using like quote unquote the obesity epidemic as their go-to sort of like example of a public health crisis or whatever. Could you talk to them about it? That would be really helpful. Like just like ask people what they need and then do those things. It's I think it's easy to get overwhelmed by the complexity of getting to know a community that's new to you or a community that you haven't explored a lot. And I think it can be really helpful in those times when it feels really overwhelming to remind ourselves that it really is just like, how do you be a decent person to each other? Do you know what I mean? Like it really does not have to be complicated. It really can be as simple as like, what do you need? How can I help? That's it. And that's a thing that many, many, many people just don't do with fat people. It's just check in and see if we have what we need.
Yeah, it's so true. I'd say that one of the most beautiful moments I've had this summer was when we were in Europe. We visited our previous au pairs, most of them are in France. And 2 of them were together with us in Lyon. And we went to a restaurant. And for those of you who visit France, you probably know it's not very fat friendly. And so we went into a restaurant, and the 2 of them just went ahead of me, got a chair without arms, and put it in the place that I was sitting without me asking for it. And I never said anything to them about it, but I just, they're listening now, that was really powerful that like they know me and they they lived in my house for a year, they know my needs are, and so I didn't need to ask, they just immediately took care of me and in that scenario because they knew I would be uncomfortable for the whole beautiful dinner that we were about to have or lunch that we were about to have in Lyon. And so it was such a simple gesture, and so those simple gestures, just like Audrey said, are just so powerful.
That's huge. I love that story. That's so great. Tuning into seating is sort of like it's like a cut above, right? It's not just I'm going to defend you if I hear someone say something. It's like I'm going to anticipate. I know that this is going to be a challenge for you, and I want you to feel comfortable here like I feel comfortable here. How do I make that happen? Like, that's awesome.
Frankly, if someone did that for me, I'd feel embarrassed. I'd rather actually ask for it. It is somebody just making assumptions about me is what bothers me the most. I would just, I also have no problem grabbing my own chair, right? I lived in a foreign country for 6 years. I lived in Japan. Japan, probably not nearly as fat friendly as France, right? I would say probably, they have sumo wrestlers. That's completely different. They're athletes, all right? At least they're considered so. But when it comes to Japan, there's many cases where I didn't fit into a lot of stuff. I talk about the roller coaster, but also seats and sometimes even cars. Like they had itty bitty cars, I could barely fit into them. And it wasn't that I was big, but it's just because everything there was small as well. And I never once expected the country of Japan to change to fit my needs. I always did my best to fit myself to what they could accommodate and what was their norm, just simply because I was a guest in their country. And it's be one thing if like they're talking about this in the US, where the US actually has like a lot of fat people. Going to France where it doesn't have as many. I don't know. The whole thing's kind of weird to me. I don't love that story. I'm just like, oh, gosh.
Like, I just want you to have a beautiful experience. Like, I want you to have, it's almost like I want you to A, have a seat at the table, and B, just really enjoy it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was such a beautiful, beautiful experience.
I have one larger and quicker thing that people can do, which is the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, NAFA, is working on a campaign to end anti-fat discrimination. They just passed an ordinance in New York City to ban anti-fat discrimination in New York. That's a huge deal, and they are cooking with gas. They are ready to move on to their next state or municipality. So folks should go to their website and sign up to volunteer, to donate, and just to stay in the loop. Because if and as it comes to your town, you want to be able to write to your city council member. You want to be able to write to your state legislature and make sure that fat folks in your community are protected from really baseline, really overt discrimination.
Guys, what did we just talk about like 4 videos ago? I literally brought this organization and was like, let's look at their game plan for 2025. And what did she just bring up here too? It's top down, right? The people who should be helping you in health are promoting this. They're in cahoots with the influencers. All this stuff is being reinforced. They go to these clinics, they learn it, they take it back to TikTok, and they're now in cahoots too with the people who are dealing with it on an activistic level through, passing laws about supposedly anti-discrimination against fat people in New York. It's all connected. Yikes.
I appreciate an actionable item, and I just wrote that down. So I will be first to do that today. Thank you so much for that idea. So for the rest of our listeners too, who are like, okay, so I need to dig in. I need to learn more about anti-fat bias. I need to assess my own biases. Just keep learning. Keep this as a conversation. Clearly, we're going to be reading y'all's books and listening to Maintenance Phase. What are some other resources that you recommend to folks that you believe are credible? That's an important word there.
I'll say I have a couple of particular favorites to recommend in this realm. One is a book that just came out a few months ago called Fat Talk by Victoria Solsmith, that is looking at sort of quote unquote the childhood of.
She just said Victoria Soulsmith. Girl, it's Virginia Soulsmith, okay? Get the name right, okay? I actually have her TikTok pulled up right here next to me because I was looking through it, doing some snooping. Virginia Soulsmith. And now I know for sure that in that previous episode of this podcast that we were listening to, you totally stole her, baked into the language thing, okay? You should have shouted her out then. You stole her material stealer.
Obesity epidemic and parenting around anti-fatness. So if folks are parents, that is an extremely sort of information dense, but also instructive book on sort of not just how to parent fat kids, but how to parent all kids sort of in a way that respects different kinds of bodies and that sort of thing. So that's thing one. And thing two, I would say, is Deshaun Harrison has a book called Belly of the Beast that is about sort of the relationship between anti-fatness and anti-blackness that is absolutely stellar, and I can't recommend it strongly enough. Those are both really, really, really strong pieces of analysis and really foundational and should be foundational to folks' understanding of how anti-fatness operates.
And it's funny how neither of those books have anything to do with physical health. Just putting it out there.
I also echo the Fat Talk. That's my summer reading.
It's a good one, right?
As a mother of, and it's fun to see you quoted so often. I'm like, yeah. Maintenance Phase. I know that it's supposed to be other than Maintenance Phase, but that is, one of the things that deconstructs things for me. And then, to kind of vibe on the entertainment space, I think that it's important to just kind of, as you go through the world, and especially because we're in the midst of making a movie, it's important to just, kind of continue examining in your own mind as you watch things, like the portrayal of people from from the whale to like anything on TV. You know, who are the characters? Who are the people? How are they being portrayed? And then start to support projects that, you know, make a difference and show body diversity in a, you know, empowered way versus just to push people down.
Okay, guys, it seems like those last like 5 minutes are actually just like an advertisement for their clinic, which my goodness, don't anybody ever go to. Like, let's just pull it up again. Pull up the website. These are all the programs you can go to by state. They're in California, Colorado, Florida, Illinois, Maryland, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia, Washington, Wisconsin. A lot of freaking states, right? And I would really take a close look about who's going to these places, because this is the information that they're learning. They could be going in for a behavior that causes excessive eating, and they're being told it's okay as long as they're not reducing their eating. They're being told that the societal issues around being fat are more important than the health issues of being fat. They're told that the discrimination is anti-Black. They're saying it's anti-women. It's anti, you know, people of LGBT variety. It's pro-capitalism, and it's like, oh, we gotta destroy the capitalist system. And yeah, thank you so much to the commenter who recommended this to me, because it really, really is a top-down conspiracy. You know, it'd be really one thing if this behavior clinic was doing their own thing and they decided to interview Aubrey Gordon, but she like agreed with every single thing that Aubrey was talking about. She agreed with her 100%. And it seems like to me that's because they're doing it already. They're doing it already in their clinics. They are perpetuating the false beliefs that you can be fat and healthy. You can't. The false beliefs that you can't lose weight. You can. And frankly, the offensive and also false comparisons to actual oppressed groups, such as historically Black people, people of color, LGBT, when we know that comparison is not at all the same thing. You can't change if you're Black. You can't change if you're gay, but you can definitely change if you're fat. It's a mutable characteristic. I use that word a lot. It's changeable. It's a changeable thing. Guys, let me know what your thoughts are down below. This is kind of a wild ride. You know, go say hi to the person in the comments who gave me this recommendation. Go check out their channel and talk to you later. Bye.